You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed-sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed-sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
I'm excited to tell you about the designs Homage has cooked up for the 2025 MLB season. If you're as baseball obsessed as I am, you'll love the full roster of major league looks from Homage. Amazing comfort and deep cut designs that help fans show off passion for their favorite teams. Homage has a massive selection that tells the story of the greatest sport from its very beginnings. Deep logo history, coast-to-coast stadium tours, and the biggest players from every era. Legends never die at Homage. If you need your new shirt for going to a ball game, Homage has you covered with its most comfortable fan clothing, and it's available for fans of all ages. This year's collection hits dinger after dinger after tater after tater. Fleece, tees, bottoms, and more. And don't forget to check out the new starter jacket lineup, an iconic dugout look you don't want to miss. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die, and these looks go long, period. Check out the Homage MLB collection to find your team's coolest gear.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson. It's Sunday night, April 27th, 2025, as we bring you a new episode. The Chicago White Sox wrapped up their 10-game road trip, and honestly, I thought it went better than expected. Overall, the White Sox went 3-7, and they are 7-21 on the season. They're currently on pace to finish 41-121, which is last year's record and suggests progress isn't being made. But the vibes kind of feel better. Does that count? In this show, we'll recap what happened in Sacramento, why it was weird to watch Major League games at a minor league ballpark, the White Sox trying out the opener in each game, and Luis Robert Jr. showing some signs of life. We'll also preview the upcoming series as the Milwaukee Brewers visit for 3 games. The Brew Crew have been struggling on the road, but they are running at will to start the season. Can Edgar Caro step up and help throw out some base stealers? We'll end the show taking a look around Major League Baseball as Eugenio Suarez hits 4 home runs in a game, and we have a surprise team holding the best record in the American League. But first, we start with an issue that's been around for the White Sox, continues to be a problem, and not making things easy is watching Tim Elko destroy AAA pitching. That's right. We have to talk about Andrew Vaughn. And joining me is Sox Machine's managing editor, Jim Margulis, as James Fegan is on his way home from Sacramento. And Jim, Andrew Vaughn is bad. And I think there are 2 separate issues here. I can understand where everybody wants to correlate them because it would be an easy transaction roster-wise. 1, because Andrew Vaughn is bad, I think he should be optioned. 2, Tim Elko has 4 home runs in his last 5 games appeared in. So it would seem, and even the Sacramento A's, Dallas Braden was questioning during their broadcast, why is Elko not with the White Sox? But there may be some specific reasons, especially from White Sox director of hitting Ryan Fuller, and why Elko is not with the White Sox. But let's start with Vaughn. He went 1 for 11 this weekend against the A's in a minor league stadium. That one hit was just a single. He currently has the worst WAR, according to Fangraphs, for qualified hitters. He's already at negative 0.8 WAR. And in 26 games this year, he's batting 157 with a 202 on base percentage and slugging 275 with 3 home runs and 11 RBIs. There's 3 options available for Andrew Vaughn, Jim. It's not getting better. We're almost done with the first month of the season. How much longer can the White Sox realistically take this?
Yeah, he's already at -1 wins above replacement or 1 win below replacement for Baseball Reference, which is
Yikes.
a 6 WAR or a -6 WAR season, which you don't see. That was like the pace that Martin Maldonado was on when the White Sox let him go, and that was a catcher's pace, which is, fewer games, but just the per game was roughly the same. And yeah, I mean, there probably is some bad luck. There probably is a weather effect, but you still get to the question that we've been wrestling with for years, which is, what's the payoff? Like, even if the weather improves, like, he's so limited as a hitter because he doesn't draw walks. It's not like, the problem with Vaughn is that he needs the hits to fall. Like, usually it's a first baseman, slow of foot, defensively limited first baseman. Usually they draw walks. Usually they have something buoying their value when they're struggling to have the hits fall, or when the weather is knocking down their deep drives and a lot of stuff's ending on the warning track. They're still drawing walks. They're still getting on base. Their lack of speed might not make it the most useful contribution to get on base, but they keep the line moving. The underlying skills are there. But Vaughn, he's good for, at most like 40 walks a year, on top of like an average that is nothing special. The on-base percentage doesn't end up being anything special. The slugging ends up being nothing special. Yeah, it's kind of like the inverse of that saying, if you don't love me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. It's like, if we don't really get it at his best, why are we tolerating his worst? I think is the question. And so,
well said.
Yeah, I think the White Sox haven't done him any favors with the way they developed him, and you can put air quotes around that, developed. If we end up clipping this for video, I can provide them. And just the idea of him skipping minor league rungs, him playing in the outfield when he has no business being in the outfield. Like, why? Certainly, for the way that Chris Getz's administration has not covered itself in glory. One of the many reasons why Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams still should have been fired, the way they handled such an important draft pick. But still, he's been in the majors long enough, and I think the underlying physical limitations are there that where you just say, like, yeah, it's probably not going to happen. Or if it happens elsewhere, 2,400 plate appearances now you're coming upon. That's like about the amount of time, or maybe even a little less than, or a little more than what they gave Gordon Beckham when they just kind of hit their head against that same wall over and over again. And, he bounced around from teams and served a role here. But ultimately he was just a guy who, just could not really hit enough to support what he did elsewhere. And I think that's the same issue with Vaughn. And so now it's just a matter of when, because I think the if is more or less settled, whether it's Tuesday, whether it's the trade deadline, whether it's in between September call up, could very well be the end of the season. But even then, like, his price is going to go up in arbitration. No real reason to extend him. No real trade value. And if they're cutting costs, like, it's the most obvious place to cut. So yeah, it's just a matter of delaying the inevitable, I think, at this point.
Yeah, since 2024, in Vaughn's last 174 games, negative 0.9 WAR, according to Fangraphs. That is the second worst for position players with at least 500 plate appearances in all of Major League Baseball. a 668 OPS. He's batting just 232, 284 on base percentage, and slugging just 384 in his last 174 games. That's an 88 weighted runs created plus. So again, in his last 174 games, he's not even a league average hitter. He's the 5th worst defensive player in baseball, according to Fangraphs, and his walk rate is 6.1%. Vaughn has 3 options left. And Jim, you mentioned the batted ball data. Take a look at that on baseballsavant.com. The difference for Vaughn, because that graphic is definitely going to come up, especially from Vaughn supporters, is that Vaughn has been unlucky when you look at his expected slugging versus actual slugging. Well, I went into a deep dive on those numbers, and the difference between the expected slugging and actual slugging is being fueled in the lack of success for Andrew Vaughn against right-handed pitching, 4-seam and 2-seam fastballs. Why is that the case? Because when Andrew Vaughn is pulling the ball, he's pulling it on the ground. 57% ground ball rate when Andrew Vaughn pulls the ball. When he hits a ball straight ahead to center field, he's hitting the ball in the air 53% of the time. When he goes opposite field, he's hitting the ball in the air, fly ball and line drive combined, 70% of the time, Jim. This is a guy who bats right-handed, who has a left-handed profile. He loves hitting the ball. He can only really hit the ball in the air towards right field, but he doesn't have the strength. He never had the strength to hit opposite field home runs all the time. So that's where Vaughn's issue is. It's just when he pulls the ball, and the league, you can read Mike Petriello, and a lot of data and research is going into this in Baseball Savant. Every team is hitting the ball in the air, pull side, more frequently. Everyone in Major League Baseball is focusing on this, and here's Andrew Vaughn. I think he's trying to hit the ball in the air, pull side, but he's got a 57% ground ball rate, and that's not going to cut it. And I think that is why, even though he's hitting 95-mile-per-hour exit velocity batted balls pull side, Jim, it's not going to do anything if it's on the ground.
It's funny when you look at his spray chart, huge gap in the left and center field. Like, he's got all of his power production basically to left field, which you might expect. You know, the home runs, the double T, the deepest part of left center. And he's got a lot of fly balls to the right, but there's just like nothing where a left fielder normally stands. Even like because even like if you pull the ball up in the air to the left side where the left fielder is in his tracks or comes in a little bit, that usually means like, oh, just missed it. That's one where you see the hitter look down, slam his bat, or you hear like the loud expletive, like the "mah" as they are running down first base. And sometimes the announcer will fill in a clever substitution for the word that they said because the barrel was on time. It was just in the wrong place, and it goes sky high to the left fielder. And there's very little. There's 1, 2, 3 fly balls. I would give 6 fly balls that are outs in that direction, but nothing like shallower, nothing to the gap. In normal fly out range, there are a lot of fly outs, like you said, to right field. A lot of normal fly outs that way. But there's just a huge gap. And it almost reminds me of Mike Tauchman when the White Sox signed him and looking at spray charts, and it's like, he's a lefty, but man, this looks like a righty spray chart because everything was going the opposite field. And, James asked about it when he was signed, and he said, yeah, just the way that Wrigley played with the wind. And certainly there were stories on StatCast with Mike Petriello's crew backing it up that just it was a really weird, gnarly climate at Wrigley last year where the wind was really screaming in more often than not from right field, knocking everything down. And so he had to live to left field. And he just said that kind of maybe screwed up his approach, but he does have the ability to punish balls to right field still. That's not the case with Vaughn. Like, he's never been somebody who puts the ball out to the opposite field. There's nothing there for him. So he just had to pull the ball, but just the trajectory's all wrong when he goes that way. It's like the bat head's dropping, the shoulder's dropping, ball goes up in the air, and he's not strong enough to hit opposite field homers with regularity, or he doesn't have levers to naturally generate that power to hit homers accidentally. So it's for every deep fly that he has to right field, that's not hit at guaranteed right field, like down the line, like going towards the Kraft cave. Off the bat, I don't get excited. There's nothing that makes me lean forward in my chair saying like, oh, this could be something. Like if I see that, I just, I do the head slump and just the right fielder's going to retreat a little bit, but catch it in front of the warning track, because that typically is how it goes.
So to bring up Spencer Torkelson, which we have done in the past, a reminder on the Spencer Torkelson white paper. So last year, Detroit put up with Torkelson struggling all the way to June 1st, where on June 1st last year, he was batting .201 with a .266 on base percentage and slugging just .330 in 54 games. So they gave Torkelson 54 games to figure it out, but after just 4 home runs and 18 RBIs, they sent Torkelson to AAA. They did not bring Torkelson back until mid-August, and in 38 games for the Tigers, he finished the year hitting .248 with a .338 on base percentage and slugging .444 with 6 homers and 19 RBI. So much better results, but nothing that the Tigers had to give Torkelson a guaranteed job. When they came into spring training during our Tigers preview with Cody Stavenhagen, I asked Cody about Torkelson, and Torkelson did not have a guaranteed job coming into spring training. He had to earn it. So by optioning Torkelson, making that serve as a wake-up call, not guaranteeing a job really lit a spark for Torkelson. And right now, he's hitting .263 with a .364 on base percentage, slugging .586. Torkelson already has 8 home runs and 24 RBIs. That is the type of offensive production everyone was expecting Torkelson to produce as the number 1 overall pick. So clearly, Jim, this is a copy and paste league. We know that. I don't understand. Maybe it happens on Monday. Maybe it happens after we publish this podcast where Chris Getz says, hey, this worked for Detroit. Should we do this for Andrew Vaughn and option him to Charlotte to see if he can work on what he needs to work on to get back on track?
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not Tim Elko, and I think there might be a minor riot if it's not Tim Elko, but
yeah,
even if it's not, like they can play Lenine Sosa at first base. They can play Bobby Dahlbeck at first base. They have options to just get by. And not exciting, but, Vaughn's not exciting. And Sosa, we've seen him make some plays at first base. Like he is more athletic at first base than Vaughn is. Dahlbeck more athletic at first base than Vaughn is. So you get some benefit of just somebody else standing there. So yeah, I mean, if Chris Getz has one of his homestand starting press conferences, which he normally does, and given that they just came off a 10-day road trip, a lot of stuff happening, I imagine he would at some point. Like it should be front and center, or one of the top questions you ask, just because everything else is more or less settled or known to be unsettled. Like right field is a mess. Shortstop is not what you want. Miguel Vargas is Andrew Vaughn, except Miguel Vargas is, they traded for Miguel Vargas and he's playing a good defense at third base. So he's got a couple things going for him that Vaughn does not. The pitching staff and the bullpen is what it is. So I think they're battling, regardless of their limitations, but Vaughn would be, I think unless you go with Luis Robert, but even then, like he's shown the ability to, when it all comes together, to offer something that the rest of the team doesn't have. I would imagine Vaughn would be among the first questions asked in terms of his production. What are you going to do? Tim Elko doing all that he can in Charlotte. How do we balance this out?
Is it about Vaughn or is it about Elko? That would be the first question if we're trying to guess what the media scrum. Because James doesn't get the first question. It's usually either Bruce Levine or Scott Merkin. Yeah,
no, I think it's both. I mean, like I think Vaughn because Elko, and I think Elko because Vaughn. In a way, okay. I think they're tied. Like I think, if this is prime Jose Abreu around, like nobody's going to be saying like, oh, you're going to call up Tim Elko? Like you're going to let him, obviously there, he's being blocked. And if Vaughn were even just a a notch below prime Jose Abreu, but just a fixture who's driving in 100 runs regardless of how he gets those 100 runs driven in. You might say, we'll consider him for the DH mix later on, but I think because he's performing so poorly, because he performed poorly last year, because he needed to turn the page on first base, and because Elko is raking, there's just an obvious candidate for an audition. And so that's why I think that it's front and center. Whereas like if Elko were what I think most people thought Elko would be, which is like feast or famine at AAA, strikeout rate in the 30s, hitting, low to mid 200s and on base percentage in the mid to high 200s. You would say like, oh, AAA slugger. Great to have somebody, in the clubhouse and defensively helping out Sergio Santos, because every manager loves having Tim Elko around. But I think because the bat to ball is playing so well at Charlotte, I think that's the reason why there's some appeal to seeing what he can do, even if there are some underlying concerns that might make it a tough transition.
So let's talk about a little bit more in depth with Tim Elko.
Speaking of not tough transitions, I set you up for that.
Thank you very much, Jim. Highly recommend going to SoxMachine.com and read James's excellent piece as he got a chance to chat with director of White Sox hitting, Ryan Fuller. And when James asked about Tim Elko, Fuller had this quote about Elko and the progress that he was trying to make in the offseason and during spring. Quote, starts with swing decisions, making sure when they throw it over the heart, we're able to make contact because that's where damage is the loudest. And when Elko swings at pitches over the heart of the plate and makes contact with it, his capabilities damage-wise are so high that it's hard on a line, end quote. And the data backs it up. So one, if you go on social media, they go by TJ Stats. I'm a Patreon supporter. They are amazing because they build dashboards taking in StatCast data from both Major League Baseball and AAA and make it easy with the visualizations. So we have the most up-to-date data from Tim Elko. So again, if you're just listening to this podcast and you're new to this show, Z contact percentage is the contact rate on pitches within the strike zone. And Z swing is the percentage of swings at pitches in the strike zone. Right now, Tim Elko is not Chase Mydroth. Chase Mydroth was swinging at 41% of the pitches at AAA in the strike zone. Elko's at 63%. So 63% of the time a pitch is in the strike zone, Elko's swinging. He is making contact on pitches in the strike zone at 85%. That's pretty good comparing to Edgar Caro, who got promoted. Caro was at 81% prior to his promotion. Colson Montgomery, we know about his struggles. Montgomery's at 78.5%. And Elko's whiff rate is only 29.2%. Elko doesn't chase a whole lot. He only chases on pitches outside the strike zone. He swings at them about 16% of the time. But when Elko swings at pitches outside the strike zone, Jim, and I'm sorry for chuckling here because it's hard to believe this percentage, the whiff rate on pitches outside the strike zone for Tim Elko is almost 77%. Now, that is a concern, and I can understand where Ryan Fuller wants to get the garden hose and spray down White Sox fans and being like, don't be too excited here, because in Major League Baseball, pitchers, especially right-handed pitchers, are going to flip those sliders off the outside corner, and if Elko is thinking it's fastball, how often is he going to be able to foul off those tough pitches? And if you're whiffing on pitches outside the strike zone 77% of the time, we could see astronomical strikeout rates from Tim Elko in the major league. So I'm wondering if this is the metric, even though Elko is absolutely smashing right now. And I don't know how any pitcher wants to attack Elko and be in the strike zone right now, Jim. But if you can flip sliders against him and breaking stuff outside of the zone, he may chase after that. If he chases, he's not hitting in AAA, and I don't have a lot of confidence he's going to make a lot of contact in the major leagues on those types of pitches.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a, like if you squeeze a balloon and it compresses in one area and it enlarges in another, That's kind of what it seems like with Elko right now, because last year his problem was swing and miss in the strike zone. Like he whiffed too often on pitches in the zone. His contact rate was like 72%, which James wrote about was like Joey Gallo level. And we've seen with Joey Gallo how hard it is for him, or how fine a line it is between him being playable and him being AAA and considering pitching. And with Elko doing that in AAA, you figure he goes to the majors even worse. Hit remarkably well despite that issue, and didn't have like the enormous strikeout numbers that Gallo had, but still, I think, Gallo is a good example for how it could easily turn on him when he got to the majors. So going from 2024 to 2025, he has improved that. He has really made, impressive headway on that problem swinging and missing inside the strike zone. Contact rate is more or less normal, I think, for a power hitter. You might see more contact hitters, more contact oriented guys being closer to 90%, but like low 80s, not bad, playable. But then like the outside the zone is where like the bat is not lining up at all. So to me, it's not like necessarily, it always feels like a little bit like bashing Tim Elko whenever you talk about his flaws, just because how he's gotten to this point is impressive. Being a super senior signing, $10,000, near catastrophic injuries at Ole Miss, producing in spite of these flaws all the way up the ladder, and, still improving, still like evolving. So like I look at these numbers and I don't say like, oh, he's going to flop as soon as he gets to the majors. Like maybe right now, yes. But if this is new, if this is a case where, hey, I'm figuring out how to hit strikes. Oh, I'm not covering outside of the zone. I'm not covering the shadow of the zone very well. I need to work on that. Like give him some time to adjust to his new flaws. That's kind of how I look at it. So I think with what Fuller is saying is, looking at that quote, things he needs to work on, continue to work on, obviously a loud skill set there. The things he needs to work on is probably just, improving the plate coverage, more off plate coverage, just a little bit more to keep himself alive. But I think it's a case where, one, the homers are coming at an alarming rate in Charlotte. Like, every time you open your social media platform of choice, there's a new Tim Elko homer. I think like, wait, was that yesterday's clip? No, it's today. He's hitting right, which is cool. So there's that, but it's just a case of Andrew Vaughn hitting so poorly that all of a sudden, like Elko is now front of mind for people who, follow the farm system casually. Like he's not somebody who only the real sickos know about and can rattle off his numbers and his pros and cons. But now he's, whatever. I'm trying to think of Chuck Garfine's podcast, the new name. It's not White Sox Talk anymore. But it's like the Chuck Garfine podcast and the post-game show audience. Tim Elko is becoming more of a fixture there. So I could see that, I think on a normal timeline where Elko is maybe evolving more gradually and Vaughn is holding down the position as well as he can, this might be a conversation had in June and July when maybe he does improve more on covering outside the zone as he gets used to this new approach and gets used to how hitters are attacking him. But right now, I think like you are seeing the conversation happen when he's still a very unfinished product. And I think there probably is some tension with the White Sox being like, do we call him up now and knock him out of what's working because all of a sudden the mistakes that he was feasting on in Charlotte are much fewer and further between? Or do we count on him being able to adhere to his work ethic and his program and his machine work because he's such a sturdy professional baseball player and he'll eventually right the ship as best as he can?
You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
And now, two pigeons bemoaning the fact you can choose the TV you want with DirecTV.
So now they can pick out their favorite entertainment when they sign up and save money?
You mean if you like sports?
You can get a sports pack.
What about entertainment?
Entertainment pack.
It's like finding an old pizza with your favorite toppings, which for me would be pineapple and toenails.
Pineapple?
Pay for the TV you want, not the TV you don't. Genre pack starting at $34.99 a month. Visit DirecTV.com for more information. New residential customers only. Local channels vary by market. Services renew monthly unless you cancel online. Credit card required. Restrictions apply.
I think it's time to call up Elko because he is 26 years old. He's not a prospect. So he's not like some 22-year-old that, well, if we wait around, we can buy another year of service time. Well, no.
I think he's a prospect. I mean, like, he's a prospect in terms of developments,
sure,
because
but not by age.
He was late to late to professional. But he's basically matriculated very smoothly up the ladder. Yeah, if he were 22, you'd be thinking like, oh, he's ahead of schedule. But because a senior signing, he's just he starts behind the clock, and I think he's done pretty well to make up for lost time.
So one sign that I think he's well prepared. This is out of all the crazy stats for Tim Elko, he is batting .432 against starting pitchers in AAA. He is slugging against starting pitchers in AAA, .946. I would be ecstatic if any White Sox prospect had a OPS of .946 in AAA. Tim Elko against starting pitchers with the game plans, with the new technology the White Sox have in Charlotte, is slugging .946. Like, he is well prepared for starting pitchers. And even more amazing, this isn't just Charlotte's success. Tim Elko is hitting better outside of Charlotte. He's got an over 1,000 OPS in Charlotte. He's got an OPS over 1,200 on the road. So I think it's time. And even if it's just you're a Mercedes firework explosion, I'll take it. I'll take it. I mentioned this in our playback watch party during Saturday's win for the White Sox. I think best case scenario for Tim Elko is that he is the White Sox version of Brent Rooker. Unlike Rooker, Elko can play first base, but he is someone that surprises you with the power. And even though they're on the older side, you can plug them in the middle of the order and wish on 30 home runs, 40 home run type of power, as long as Elko continues to make progress and continues to make improvements. But after Ryan Fuller's quote, I was just like looking at the metrics. That's the only one that jumps out at me is the whiff rate on pitches when he's chasing, but he doesn't chase a whole lot, 16% chase rate. So if Elko can stay disciplined and show some of that same discipline that Edgar Caro showed so far, Jim, maybe it's not that big of a concern.
To me, I think what jumps out to me most when looking at his numbers, his splits, and I'm seeing if this is current with, so this is as of Sunday, or through Sunday, I should say, of his, and I'm going to have to kind of do the math here because Baseball Reference has plate appearances. Minor League Baseball does not use plate appearances, but I think he's at 94 plate appearances for the season. Only 9 plate appearances against lefties. Like, he's faced entirely righties this season. And what's weird is normally you would say like, oh, that's great. If he's got a 4-digit OPS and he's only faced righties and he's a right-handed hitter, like, he should mash. But he had reverse splits last year, to where he crushed righties and struggled against lefties. So right now his numbers are the same against righties and lefties, but he's only faced, 9 plate appearances against lefties. He's hit 1 homer. He hit 1 homer, 9 plate appearances. Like your OPS is gonna be fine at that rate. So like you can't really use that at this point. But one thing I don't know is if he was his form last year, or if he's like an evolution on his form, but still essentially the same hitter, to where like he doesn't crush lefties the way you think he might. It might be a little bit difficult to platoon him or play him to strengths if he doesn't hit lefties and the righties he faces all of a sudden throw like these pitches that are a lot harder for him to square up, because the strikeout rate is still, pretty high against righties. But if he is evolving to where like now he is no longer as flummoxed by left-handed pitching because of this ability to cover more of the strike zone and punish more pitches inside the strike zone, he might be a different guy. So that's one question he hasn't answered to me, but just because based on an apparently very right-handed international league, or at least the opponents that they faced, which is, Norfolk and Gwinnett and Scranton Wilkes-Barre, that they just must have like an entirely right-handed pitching staff and, or rotation and bullpen, that he's only faced, 9 lefties so far.
So with this being said, coming full circle, we have a lot of reasons why Andrew Vaughn should be optioned, and the White Sox should follow Detroit's path and how they handled Spencer Torkelson last year to see if that helps Vaughn to reset and get Vaughn on a better track, not back on track. The White Sox don't need Vaughn to get whatever his previous track was, because that wasn't good enough either. We are struggling to find metrics that suggest that Tim Elko doesn't merit a shot in the major leagues right now. We found one when he's chasing, which is an incredibly low chase rate. He whiffs a lot. Okay. Give him a shot. Give him a shot, White Sox. So that's my final verdict. That's how I feel. Option Vaughn. Bring up Elko. Let's rock and roll. See if this works. If not, you got Dahlbeck, you got Lenny and Sosa. Sosa's been hitting. You keep moving forward. But at least then we know, in a season searching for answers, you can add first base to the long-term questions of you need to find a solution here. Because it's not Vaughn, and you may not have it within the system if Elko doesn't hit. Other things that happened in this weekend. Let's talk about this opener strategy, Jim. Worked great for the White Sox starters. So Tyler Gilbert made back-to-back opens, technically starts. Brandon Eisert made the start on Sunday, but Gilbert and Eisert only pitched 1 inning in their appearances. Sean Burke on Friday, 5 1/3 innings, allowed 3 hits, struck out 5, walked 2. Jonathan Cannon almost pitched the rest of the game. He fell 1 out short. He pitched 7 2/3 innings. He looked good. Pitched to the score. Got a lot of run support. Allowed 6 hits, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. And the Dart, Davis Martin, how about 6 scoreless innings from the Dart, only allowing 3 hits, walking 2, and striking out 5. How do you feel about the opener, Jim, in 2025? And if it worked pretty well this weekend, should it continue happening for the White Sox moving forward?
Hell yeah. I mean, this is what we've been wanting for years, is sensible opener exploration. Like, I think we've seen the strengths. I think we've seen the limitations elsewhere around the league. How it can kind of wear out its welcome at some point, or at least run its course with pitchers who aren't necessarily used to doing bulk duty that often and going, if they only go 2 times through the order, that still leaves a lot of innings for the bullpen. But I think this is rather unique in terms of setting up starters who can go 6 innings. I think that's what makes it different here. And especially like Jonathan Cannon, I think, is probably most emblematic of just being weak against lefties. And so you have Lawrence Butler and you have Tyler Soderstrom batting top 3 in the order, and Tyler Gilbert or Brandon Eisert helps you face them one last time. Makes all the sense in the world. Like, yeah, if you're Jonathan Cannon and when you come into the game, you're effectively facing an order where Lawrence Butler's hitting 7th and Tyler Soderstrom's hitting 9th. Why wouldn't you want that every time? Same thing with Davis Martin, I think, whose changeup has been, a little bit hit or miss. Like, some games it's been great, some games not so much. But I think we've seen, at least with this proof of concept against Sacramento, is that seems like less stress at the very least, like less stress out of the gates. If Jonathan Cannon gets a longer runway to get a feel for things, Davis Martin, same thing. Sean Burke was probably the least successful. Even then, his start was fine, or his outing was fine for somebody at the stage of his career that he's in. And all things considered, you take 3 starters averaging 6+ innings in a series. That's great. You count that as a massive success, and you try to carry that forward. I think we've seen nothing wrong with this. I think there's no drawback whatsoever. And so, I think, occasionally, if it's a lineup that doesn't have scary lefties, maybe have Martin start, maybe have Cannon start. But in a case where you have a lineup trying to stack lefties up top to get the most plate appearances in the game, I think Gilbert makes sense, because if he can go 1 inning, and if they try to delay the lefties to face Cannon, he can go 2 innings. And I think either way, you're setting up a pitcher who wants to go 5 and wants to go 6, and Will Venable will let him go 5 and 6, especially in a 10-game road trip where they're trying to spare reliever appearances wherever he can. There's no drawback. It's just in a different order. If you had Davis Martin going 6 innings and you had Brandon Eisert pitching the 7th, it's no different from Eisert pitching the 1st and Martin pitching innings 2 through 7 himself. So it's what I've been wanting for as long as the opener has been a thing. My biggest gripe with Rick Renteria was that he never practiced it when he had the opportunity. And it came to a head in the 2020 playoffs when he tried to scramble in Game 3 and had no idea how to do it. And seeing Venable do it this early in his tenure, when he has, when the team has no aspirations, so there's no harm in failing, but also there's a very logical through line for how this works and the benefits, and how there's no detriment to developing Cannon and Martin and Burke as starters. All for it.
Luis Robert showed some life in this series. He went 3 for 12. He walked 3 times. He also reached on an error. So he got on base 7 times in this series against the A's. He hit a home run, 2 RBIs, 3 for 4 in stolen bases. Robert scored 4 runs. Our James Fegan did inform us prior to getting to the clubhouse that White Sox hitting coach Marcus Thames was having a pretty lengthy conversation with Luis Robert prior to the series. So just like how Marcus Thames maybe found something for instant success for Miguel Vargas to start hitting the ball better with a hand adjustment in Minneapolis, maybe, just maybe, White Sox can get Luis Robert back on track. Because when Robert's getting on base, Jim, he's making things happen, especially with his legs. And I know we're all waiting to see if he's still got that 38 home run version in him, but this is still a productive player as long as he gets on base.
Yeah, the 16 walks in 26 games is really something. That's basically unfathomable for what Robert was early in his career. I'm looking at it, 2021 drew 14 walks. So he's already drawn more walks this year than he did in 2021. He's coming up on 2022. In 98 games, he drew 17 walks, and he's got 16 already. He's topped out at 30. He's more than halfway to his single season walk total in 145. That was 145 games he set it in. So yeah, his walk rate, that's something. And if you told me that he was walking basically every other game, I'd say great. That's the final step in his development. He is going to be an American League MVP threat. And instead we're seeing a very inconsistent effort, but I think we've seen enough of, going back to thinking about the way people have talked about Colson Montgomery as they've tried to explain why they still believe in him. And you can be convinced or you can be unmoved. But I think it was Chris Getz who said there are some games where you see that he's the best player on the field. And I'm thinking I'm not sure if I buy that. But I think with Luis Robert, there are some games where you see he is the best athlete on this field. He is the best ball, in the outfield, on the base paths, when he gets a hold of one, that's making the game look simple. That's making the field look small. That's making the base paths look short. This is why he got the extension that he did. And then he has games where he has the ball clink off his glove when he's trying to charge it for an out. He's not going to get it home. And then he flails at a slider 3 feet off the plate to end the game when there's really good at bats against Mason Miller. And he looks completely disengaged. And it's going to be tough, I think, this year to kind of get an idea of who is the real Luis Roberts. But the fact that he's walking so much, I'm hoping, and this is kind of a blind hope because this is so new and because the rest of his other numbers are so bad. But we heard last year that part of his struggles were just being the only guy in the lineup who was really a threat that lineups had to pay attention to. In between them pitching around him and him feeling like he had to do something, expanded the zone, late on fastballs, not really understanding discipline, trying to be disciplined, but not understanding how. Nothing added up, and all the parts of his game just crumbled on him. And I think this year he's doing enough right in terms of getting on base without hits and running when he gets on base to still have some hope that he's going to have a monster week here that turns it around. But it feels like once you say that, that's when the 0 for 4, 3 strikeouts, befuddling decision game comes in, and you think like, oh, they're going to be able to trade him for an A-ball reliever at this point, come trade deadline. So I don't know what to make of him at this point, but at least the walk total and the fact that he's running after he walks is at least novel enough to be something to carry forward. Like, he's already stolen 10 bases. His previous high is 23. Like, so he's going to blow past, based on the pace he set early, past his career best in categories that are maybe not the most important, but should be a part of his game. Or in the case of walks, like, if they're part of his game, then he's way more useful. So yeah, it's a real mixed bag for him, but in the way like mixed bags can be positive once in a while. Whereas, Andrew Vaughn, it's like a mixed bag, but in the case of like what's going good are the kind of either advanced stats, or you might consider them imaginary stats because they're not actually turning into outcomes on the field.
And then finally, the last point about Sacramento this summer, Jim, because Sacramento does get hot, I feel like the A's home games are going to be the American League version of Coors Field. Like
Mexico City.
Yeah, watching the games on TV, the stadium feels small. That wall is not very tall in right field. I am expecting a lot of home runs, and the A's are already hitting home runs, especially the top half of their lineup. That could be a big benefit to this current A's roster, where they really surprise folks and playing better baseball or winning more games than expected. But yeah, that was my biggest takeaway watching the games this weekend, just on the idea of like Sacramento hosting major league games. It's a small stadium, and we're going to see a lot of runs this summer in games in Sacramento.
Yeah, it's a PCL park, and PCL numbers, park factors are known for being incredibly friendly. And there are more extreme parks in the Pacific Coast League, like at altitude, like Salt Lake City and Albuquerque.
I was going to say Albuquerque.
Are some insane ones. And Sacramento, I think, plays more normal. And I think that's, when you look at just...
If the A's were in Albuquerque, Jim, Soderstrom could hit 60 homers this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be pretty gnarly, I think, when it comes to just the overall numbers. Like, there were a couple of balls, like the Jacob Wilson homer, not crushed, like not mashed, but like easily coasted out of the park. It looked like a no doubter, and then you look at the components and like, maybe a lot of backspin because that was not triple digit exit velocity. Same thing with like Edgar Caro's near homer that ended up on the warning track, and Butler caught it against the wall. Off the bat, didn't look like much. I thought, he just missed it, like just got under it and just kept going and going. You saw a lot of right fielders drifting back, and even like Athletics outfielders drifting back. Like, they have not mastered the way the ball carries yet, and they're not running to the spots. So the fact that it was cool and rainy for the series. Like I think the temperatures were in the 60s, not playing like the 100-degree heat they're supposed to get regularly during the regular season, that we did not see the way the park might play in a month or two. So we've been speaking about the weather in Chicago and how it's knocking down balls. Like this is a case where I don't know if Sacramento, like if there's a climate in Sacramento, conditions that knock down balls. But the fact that, we could just see baseballs shoot off bats and keep going the way we see them in Charlotte, like any fly ball to right field in Charlotte might go out. Mm-hmm. I think it could be the same thing in Sacramento when it's June and July and the first pitch temperatures are like 97 degrees.
Well, the White Sox don't play in Sacramento until next year. We'll have more coverage about games in Sacramento from James Fegan on SoxMachine.com. Look forward to that coverage. The White Sox are now coming back home. They got a 6-game homestand. The Milwaukee Brewers are first, followed by the Houston Astros over the weekend. The Milwaukee Brewers are currently 14-15 on the season. They're 3 games back in the National League Central. They won their last game. In their last 10 games, the Brewers are 4-6. Very good in Milwaukee. The Brewers are 9-4. Not very good on the road. They're 5-11. We'll talk about that in a moment. Your pitching probables for this series. White Sox have Monday off, so Tuesday night, 6:40 p.m. Central Time. It is Bark at the Park, so there'll be dogs out there in the bleachers. 75-degree day in Chicago on Tuesday. It is Freddie Peralta for the Brewers against Bryce Wilson. Revenge game for Bryce Wilson. Wednesday night, 6:40 p.m. Central Time. Tobias Myers. Kind of a revenge game because he was briefly with the White Sox system. Against Shane Smith, revenge game, as Smith was the Rule 5 pick for the Milwaukee Brewers this past offseason. And Thursday, getaway day for the Brewers, a 1:10 p.m. Central Time start. Chad Patrick against Sean Burke. And we'll see if the White Sox go with an opener, maybe for Bryce Wilson or Sean Burke. I don't expect one for Shane Smith. Who's hot hitting coming into this series for the Brewers? Jackson Chourio. He's got a .986 OPS in his last 6 games with a home run and 3 doubles. Christian Yelich has an OPS over 900. He's got a home run and 8 RBIs in his last 7 games. And in his last 7 games, Rhys Hoskins is batting .400. But back to Milwaukee sputtering Jim to start the year on the road, 5-11. Could this be an upset series win for the White Sox if the Brewers are just not the same team away from Milwaukee?
Well, I think when it comes to Milwaukee stats, looking at their pitching staff, it's now back to middle of the pack after they got smoked by the Yankees to start the season. Absolutely crushed when the torpedo bat was a massive controversy. And you're seeing all this concern about is this going to level the playing, or is this going to just throw the competition out of whack, and now you don't really hear about that anymore. And also Milwaukee's back to normal, more or less, as a pitching staff, getting better as the season's going on. So I think you look at 5-11, you think it's just barely throw that first series out, which I think you can do early on in the season, and hovering around 500, basically, like just one series away. And this could maybe be the series that makes them 8-8 after, going 5-8 on the road since the Yankee series. So, I wouldn't think of them any differently now that they've more or less rebounded from that really awful sandbagging start to their season. They kind of look like the team that they always look like, which is some really fun parts offensively and a pitching staff that doesn't have a whole lot of name brand recognition, but is outperforming just the individual names they have going for it.
And then for the Brewers, they have the second most stolen bases in Major League Baseball, only trailing the Chicago Cubs. So if the Brewers do get on base, Jim, I'm expecting the Brewers to be running and running often. Christian Yelich has got a bunch of steals. You've seen Sal Frelick and Bryce Terrain as the Brewers AAA affiliate is in Nashville. If these guys get on, I'm expecting them to run. So what's your confidence level with Edgar Caro helping out the White Sox pitching staff and trying to throw runners out, especially at second base?
Yeah, it's kind of funny looking at this lineup and looking at the names and thinking I've seen a lot of these guys. I've seen a lot of them grow up and Sounds have been a fun team to follow. And so I do have warm feelings for like watching Sal Frelick and a lot of Bryce Terang for a couple of years before he finally found his footing. So, good for them. When it comes to the White Sox pitching staff and allowing stolen bases, surprisingly effective at limiting the running game. When you look at their numbers, and I'm looking at Baseball Reference because they have the most comprehensive one, so it doesn't include Sunday. But through Saturday, 20 stolen bases attempted on them, 15 successful in 27 games, 7 of them on Mike Vassell. So basically half of the stolen bases allowed on him. Otherwise, you look at the names like Martin 2, Wilson 2, Cannon 1, Gilbert 1 for 2, Schuster 1, like 2 unsuccessful attempts on Ellard. The lefties are shutting down the running game. So this is something I looked at last year with when I was looking at Chris Flexen and how he was sneakily good defensively. And part of it was just limiting the running game and looking at Jonathan Cannon. And Cannon wasn't as good as Flexen defensively, but he had a lot of the same characteristics in terms of they didn't really run on him, covered his ground well, made no silly mistakes. And for Flexen, like every out counts. Like he's somebody who is such a fringy talent in terms of his arsenal and the way he generates too many fly balls. You would think like, oh, he's going to be crushed out of the league. But because, he does enough things well, moves the ball around well enough, limits the running game, does not allow extra bases on his watch when they reach base, helps him stay in the league. And I think that's something I saw with Cannon. And then even looking at the rest of the list, like Garrett Crochet, not good at holding the running game or being a good defender, but because he struck so many guys out, who cares? That's he can end up in whatever position he ends up in because he's generating all that power and it's not going to hurt him. But when I was looking at the White Sox, who's going to get strikeouts and realizing they really don't really have strikeout guys on the staff. What they do have is guys who have decent fielding numbers. And so that's something I had in the back of my mind. So seeing this carry forward into 2025, aside from Vassell, who was not in the mix until the very end of spring training, pretty good. And so I think, we've seen Caro cut down a runner. We saw Matt Theis complete the back end of a strike him out, throw him out. I think the pitchers are giving catchers a chance, and I think Caro has surprised a lot of people with his pop time and accuracy in the minors to overcome the lack of like a real standout arm that makes him more of a playable catcher than evaluators thought as he's gone up the chain. So it'll be kind of a strength versus strength. And I'm curious to see how it'll unfold. I think one thing you could say about the White Sox pitching staff, or, when they're off, guys aren't running because they're guys on first and second, not just guys on first. And so like there's too much traffic to run, which is, I think, one thing you have to be on the lookout for when looking at stolen base numbers. But certainly there isn't. We've seen teams run wild in the White Sox. We've seen think about Aaron Bummer, I think is probably the single biggest example of somebody getting a 5-step running start on him. We're not really seeing that this year. We're seeing guys who are pretty adept at holding runners, or just either have learned how to or have need to in order to survive in the majors, survive in even AAA to do it. That so far, that's one area of the White Sox to where like their defense is holding up.
Well, we'll be recapping this series Thursday night. That'll be a new Sox Machine podcast that we record, recapping what happens against the Brewers, and then preview the upcoming series as the calendar flips from April to May with the Houston Astros coming into town. It's another long stretch of games for the White Sox. Their next off day scheduled is not until Monday, May 12th, as they play a home series against Miami, day off, and then head to Cincinnati in the middle of May. So lots of games coming up for the White Sox, and we'll see what roster moves they make during the off day on Monday. Any breaking news, make sure to go to SoxMachine.com and read our coverage about any news of the White Sox do make some roster adjustments. As we typically do after the weekend, it's time to take a look around Major League Baseball. The big headline, Jim, Arizona's Eugenio Suarez. He hits 4 home runs in a game, but Arizona still loses And it's amazing to me just how few 4 home run games there have been in the history of Major League Baseball. It feels like the 4 home run game is more rare than the perfect game. And I'm not exactly sure which one's more difficult to achieve, the pitcher getting the perfect game because so much has to go right, or the hitter hitting 4 home runs in a game. But I feel for Eugenio Suarez, who's got a weird number so far to start the year. He has 10 home runs this year, in large thanks to hitting 4 home runs in a game. But Arizona's still losing the game. That's got to be a sour note for Suarez.
Yeah, it's we've seen it with the White Sox hitting 7 homers and losing. It's kind of
back in 2016.
Yep, we know what that's like. So I think we've seen like some weird games in terms of if you follow Sarah Lang's on Blue Sky or Twitter, like she's a big fan of the win expectancy charts that suddenly flip over, and she usually punctuates it with a wee for the slide going down.
that one was.
It seems like a lot of those. That's what's jumped out to me is like a lot of those games for as pitching friendly or strikeout oriented or velocity dominated as we've seen Major League Baseball be, it seems like a lot of late game reversals. Like you're not seeing the automatic closers yet. A lot of blown saves, which is fun. I think that's good. Like it's automatic bullpens are boring. Guys who can throw 103 miles per hour for 1 inning and never get hit. Like it's fun seeing the White Sox get to Mason Miller and really threaten him. Like awesome. Like as impressive as Miller is, it's notable when one guy does that, when you have like a half the league having closers who throw 101, it seems like less novel and it becomes like they inherit the earth. Then what you're left with is just a real stiff game that does not generate action. Seeing the White Sox generate action against Mason Miller is a lot of fun. So it's fun seeing the swings, the wild swings of fortune. The Mets just had one against them with the Nationals. Cubs and Dodgers were throwing haymakers at each other. That's the big fan of that. Big fan of that action.
What is catching our attention? I'll start here as I teased it in the intro. The Detroit Tigers currently have the best record in the American League. They are on a hot streak. So maybe AJ Hinch is pressing the right buttons. He's got this figured out as far as the Tigers team since their torrid stretch to make the postseason last year, shocking everyone, winning a playoff series and getting to the ALDS. The Tigers are currently 18-10 this year, and they've only played against the White Sox 3 times. So it's not like the White Sox are really helping out that record. The Colorado Rockies on the other side of the spectrum are only on pace to win 24 games. Jim, I'm going to make a bold prediction right now on April 27th. That White Sox record of 121 losses is only going to last 1 year. I am expecting the Rockies to eclipse 121 losses in 2025.
Doesn't strike me as a hot take.
Not right now.
Not Rocky Mountain cold take. But just because the division is so good.
Yeah. They have
it's
no
like
chance.
The AL Central, the AL Central performed well in 2024, but it was not that good. You saw like a lot of fattening up on the White Sox that did not translate elsewhere. We saw the Twins fall apart because they sustained themselves against the White Sox. Not a healthy diet to be only good against them. Whereas you see the Dodgers getting real challenges from the Padres, and the Diamondbacks still are building on what they've built, and the Giants are back to being the weird Giants of like, how are these guys good? I kind of expected them to slide backwards with Buster Posey in charge, the way that the Astros lost their way when Jeff Bagwell started having more say in the operations. Like, is this guy just an impressive name who gets the owner excited, but doesn't really have a vision for how to compete in the modern game? So I was a little bit skeptical about Buster Posey. Maybe I still should be, but it's right now, like the payoff's been immediate there. So, between those like 4 teams who were all, 3 of them were considered among the National League's best. And then the Giants have come in with the best record in the division so far. Like, yeah, that could be a force that keeps the Rockies down, that just pummels them, especially given their ballpark and how punishing it is to play in their own ballpark.
Yeah.
That could be another factor that just exacerbates the Rockies' flaws and make it just impossible for them to compete with how under-talented they are.
The Rockies are currently 0-6 against the National League West. The Rockies in night games, 0-11. The Rockies have yet to win a game at night. And against left-handed pitching, left-handed starters, the Rockies are 0-9. They are 4-23. I think the White Sox record of 121 losses in 2024 is only going to last 1 year. The Rockies are going to eclipse it. And then there you go. The White Sox are not the 1968 Mets or
62 Mets.
62 Mets.
Yeah.
They don't have to wait. Hooray! Not our record anymore. Thank you, Colorado. So that's what's catching my attention. Jim, how about you? What's catching your attention around Major League Baseball?
Yeah, Rockies were, kind of things that had been capturing my attention, still doing so, like the Rockies. Negative 69 run differential, not nice run differential. The White Sox only 3 wins better than the Rockies, but negative 25 run differential. The White Sox are 1-8 in 1-run games, which is why like their Pythag is they should have 11 wins at this point. They only have 7. So on one hand, normally you'd say like Will Venable doing a terrible job. In this case, I could say like 1-run losses. That means they're keeping it pretty close. Could also be a case where just it's 1 run. If you lose games by 1 run, it means that other teams would have won that game by 2 or 3 runs, as we've seen a couple times this year with the way the White Sox have hit with runners in scoring position. So I'm going to be looking at the White Sox 1-run record to see like how much that gets away from them. Teams with worse run differentials than the White Sox: the Blue Jays, the Orioles, which is real surprising. Like the Orioles, Charlie Morton getting thumped. Charlie Morton somehow looking very, very old. Them really scrounging for starters. Like this is frightening territory. Like they just got thumped by the Tigers. Shut up by Tarek Skubal, and then Kramer's got an ERA over 7 for the Orioles. Like this is not good for them. And this is, I think, Charlie Morton already 0-6. Impressive. Like just how do you do that? Like it's. Do you
retire mid-season at some point?
Yeah, I mean, it could be, or just, they DFA him or try to move in the bullpen and see like if they can, get that curveball working in shorter stints. But how old is Charlie Morton now? Is he 41? 40. So I knew he's at least 40, 41. So, I mean, he could just be 41 years old, kind of like the way Carlton Fisk hit a wall. It could be the same thing with Charlie Morton here, where time comes for us all. But yeah, that's, seeing the run differentials and seeing the White Sox being like feisty, but not having enough. And if the Orioles are already running worse than them and they just have enough offense to help out their own cause a little bit, then, that kind of masks some things, but they're already scrounging for starters in April. And I think this is the worst case scenario that, like, for fans of the Orioles, for writers writing about the Orioles and Dylan Cease and Corbin Burns, why not re-sign him? Why not? He's a great fit. He's giving this rotation exactly what it needs. Why not extend him? And them not doing that and cutting corners and suffering injuries. It's like, this is, they are now paying that check, and curious if this continues, like, does this turn into a punt year? Like if the Yankees are good and the Orioles are like already like by Memorial Day, realizing like we do not have the pitching, like what do they do? Fascinating. Like, I would not want to be an Orioles fan this year. Like just especially, with the ownership. Like they already had the ownership. Like it's a case where like the Twins, you understand why they're just counting down the days. Like it's senioritis for the Pohlads because they thought they were supposed to be done owning the team already. And now they're not. And just like, okay, what do? We didn't have a plan. David Rubenstein's the owner now. It's not the Angeloses anymore. Like this is supposed to be a guy who's going to infuse them with money to supplement this exciting core they built. And there's no evidence of that. And is that a Rubenstein thing? Is that a Mike Elias thing? Do we see like a front office change if this doesn't go well? A lot of questions that I'm really curious to see the answer to, because this has been a hypothetical for a couple of years now. It's not just something like, oh my God, the Orioles don't have pitching. How did this happen? Like this is a case where, the Orioles don't have pitching. People thought this might happen. So a real fascinating subplot for the AL East right now.
Well, let us know what you guys think of what's catching your attention around Major League Baseball. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. We'll have upcoming multimedia content as the Chicago White Sox late on Monday will be unveiling their new City Connect uniforms. And Jim and I will spend a couple of minutes recording our reaction video to those new uniforms. We'll post that on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. We're going to have upcoming draft videos as well. I know I just released my recent mock draft. We'll have videos of Tennessee and LSU. Liam Doyle was great, but Cade Anderson, I'll write more about him. And some impressive bats as well over that weekend series between Tennessee and LSU. That'll be on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine.
One thing as well as coming to Sox Machine is, James will be writing about Sacramento. And as we get into the support us at Sox Machine bits, because James isn't here, one thing he was saying is because the White Sox beat contingent is shrinking and your resources are being pulled away. Like when he goes on a road trip, especially to a team that does not have its own media following, he can talk to so many people. Like it's a wide open clubhouse. Nobody is really occupied. And he can just get so much done that he, just because of how many more bodies are in a clubhouse when the White Sox are home. He mentioned that to us, and because he's not here, because he's flying home, he's not in a position to mention that, but the kind of coverage that teams get, that, outlets gets when they go on the road is, so much fuller because of just the recognition they get, between fewer bodies being there, but also the fact that James is on the road with the players who are also in their third city of a 10-game road trip that's covering, 3 time zones. This is the kind of coverage that we can, I'm excited to get. It's a coverage I always loved reading from James when he was at the Athletic and spending the venture capital money there to get that coverage. And we do not have VC dollars yet, and hopefully we never will. But in the case of like when we do have that support to send them on trips, I really think it's worth our money to spend it, and it's worth us spending your money to do it. So as we continue on this venture of building up our readership for hopefully a more enjoyable product. And this is when, looking at that negative 25 run differential, the games have been more watchable this year. Hopefully, as some new faces come aboard, like the stories become richer, the storylines become more varied in terms of failures and successes versus 35 flavors of failure, that our coverage is going to be a lot more just varied and exciting and fun. So thanks to everybody who supported us to send James to Sacramento. And, this is why we want to get him on the road, to be able to get the kind of coverage that being a road dog can allow him to get.
Yeah, we're sending James to Cincinnati in May. We're also sending James to Texas. He's going to be covering both the Houston and the series in Arlington, Texas, the Astros and Rangers series in June. So again, huge thanks to you guys subscribing to Sox Machine. If you currently aren't a subscriber to Sox Machine, go to soxmachine.com to sign up. Monthly plans start at $5. At that tier, you get an ad-free version of both the podcast and the website. You can participate in the comments section as well, and unlocks all the posts that are on soxmachine.com. We also have additional tiers of support. We'll have our monthly Zoom call with our $25 tier and our Veterans Committee members soon. So that gives you an opportunity to ask direct questions and get even some of the gossip and whisper that James is hearing from the White Sox clubhouse that he doesn't necessarily add into his reports or shares on the podcast. That's the extra juicy information, always very insightful. So again, if you're interested in helping us out, you enjoy our coverage, go to SoxMachine.com to sign up today. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. Follow us on social media, especially on Instagram. We have very few Instagram followers. Jim and I, shocker, we're not big gram people, but we're trying to build that up. I mention that because I will be at the City Connect unveiling. So on Instagram, we'll have the photos and the videos of the White Sox releasing their new City Connect uniforms. Follow us there at Sox Machine. We're also on Twitter and Blue Sky at that same handle. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
At Strayer University, we help students like you go from, is it possible, to anything is possible by offering access to up to 10 no-cost gen ed courses, so you can reach your goals affordably and fast. Visit strayer.edu to learn more. No-cost gen eds provided by Strayer University affiliate Sophia. Eligibility rules apply. Connect with us for details. Strayer University is certified to operate in Virginia by Chev and has many campuses, including at 2121 15th Street North in Arlington, Virginia.